would you do? You're going to get tired of hearing me ask that question by the time I'm finished telling this story, but it's the question we need to ask ourselves over and over if we are ever going to have any hope of understanding how the immigration of a few thousand Jews to a lightly developed area of the Eastern Mediterranean in the late 1800s has grown into the most bitter and intractable conflict in the world today. Any fight that goes on this long suffers from a lack of empathy, with the list of grievances so long on both sides that you're going to find plenty of reasons to hate whoever you want to hate if that's what you're looking for.
Things are going to start happening to me now.
I think Tyler is amazing.
And I'm a fan of this show. I've watched several episodes.
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Tyler. You stink, Tyler.
Never promise crazy a baby.
Oh, I like that. That's a cool idea.
Are either of you homosexuals?
I go both ways. What do you think?
You mean like flaming or?
No, we're not homosexual, but we are willing to learn.
But I do wonder, for others, in other cases, whether libertarianism today is just an excuse for many on the right to act selfishly.
Look at me. And then some fat asses in Washington started having opinions. The Olympic Committee started having opinions. You bitch, I know you! You started writing your opinions.
And it just makes me wonder, you're dead, bitch. You know, why are you doing this to this poor guy?
I don't care. I'm a libertarian. What I'm getting is...
Did you vote for Joe Jorgensen or Trump?
Who?
Joe Jorgensen? That was the perfect answer, thank you.
And hello, everybody. This is Tyler Yonke, LPR. JC says, nice new intro. Where have you been? We've been showing this intro for a while, I must say. So, anyway, welcome. Tyler, why so much Martyrmade? Why are you doing all this kind of crap, right? Well, we're going to, I thought I would give some due. One, I need to do some corrections. And two, I need to give some due to those defending Churchill. I'll play a few clips with him. And by the way, there's some bad. Once again, it's the guy. And by the way, there's two things to go check out. Go out, check out, as always, you should, Liberty Lockdown, Clint Russell. The last bit of it he played Kissen, Constantin, whatever that guy's name is, the Trigonometry podcast. And he played some stuff where he and James Lindsay are really pushing this whole thing about the woke right. And I think it's just gaslighting. It's really good info. I think you should go check that out. But in the meantime, we're going to play some of our own stuff. And I just thought I would start there. You can hear Daryl Cooper, Martyrmade, talking about having empathy for people on all of these sides. It's so interesting to see. And I think a lot of this stuff that's coming out against Daryl Cooper. And by the way, I'm starting off here. I'm not a historian. I get facts wrong. I don't know. Maybe he's getting it right. But it looks like to me a lot of the pushback is really about just disagreements with where his outcomes are, his opinions, rather than disagreements about his facts. So I could be completely wrong about those. But however, I thought I would start here with, let's see here. I want to do, I think it's, is it there? Okay, there we go. So I said yesterday, and because I Googled it up here, and then I fact checked the Andrew Roberts, the historian, where he said, Hitler declared war on the U.S. And then AI thing I was looking at was like, no, they actually didn't. And then Minder and some other people were agreeing with me. I think I'm wrong. So I went through here. This is Wikipedia, but I was able to verify it. This just happened to be a nice chart. You can see the dates, and they have a key here, which you can see the type of whatever it has here. So there's an attack without prior formal declaration of war, declaration and or attack without standard formal procedure, sometimes preceded by casus belli, thus fait accompli. State of war arrived at through use of ultimatum. That would probably be, I don't know what that is. Example. Formal declaration of war is the W here. And so we could just go down, and by the way, it's Germany. It's all these going back and forth. Germany does against Poland, then Slovakia against Poland, then the United Kingdom. So I'm just looking down here it took me a while to find it here, but we're going down to 1941, getting near there in December. That is when there's the United Kingdom, almost there. There we go. That's when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, and they declared this, and then they attacked. They were supposed to do it the day, 30 minutes before. It took them a little bit of time after. And they declared war on the U.S. And then, Canada, Australia, New Zealand against Finland, Romania, Hungary. The same day, Canada, Panama, Yugoslavia against Japan. United States, UK against Japan, and all these other countries. This was after the Pearl Harbor. South Africa, Manchukuo against the United States. Did you know that? Did you know they declared war against the United States? There you go. Germany against the United States, December 11, 1941. Germany and Italy. And then the United States, along with Cuba, against Italy and Germany in the same day. So I don't know what the timing was there, but you can read the German declaration. You can read the Italian declaration. I would like to read the United States declaration. Well, I think you know that. Was that the day of infamy? I think it was after that. That's it. Anyway, Eddie Grimm's in the chat as well. Welcome, everybody. Oh, you know what? Let's do this. There we go. Hi, JC, he says. So I just wanted to make that correction because one, that's me making a correction, doing the right thing, as you will. Now, what I would also like to do is look at some of these comments that got posted up here yesterday, and there we go. I think this will. Should we try that one? Actually, let's do this. Let's turn off that and go to there. There we go. Okay, so I posted up there that, look, the Germany declaration, I found that, There was a guy here, he posted and then he removed his post, and so I don't have it up here, and he basically made the comment that we talked about yesterday, which is when Daryl Cooper's like, look, it became more than, it could have been just an invasion of, taking of Poland, but it was more than that. And they're like, hey, Churchill didn't even come into power till after that. That's not what he's saying. So there's a breakdown of that. So I mentioned that, and then he removed it. But he did, I think he did post in here something else. I did a breakdown here. Here he goes. This is ARTT3165. So here he does give, and I want to give not short shrift to this. So he said, Germany invades Austria. 1938, Czechoslovakia, 1939, Poland, 1939, Denmark, 1940, Norway, 1940, Belgium, 1940, Netherlands, May 1940, and France, 1940. May 1940, Churchill becomes PM. So Churchill then did, let me just continue. By the time Churchill became PM, Germany had already invaded 8 countries. Of the total 11 countries Germany would invade during the duration of the war. So tell me how Churchill widened the war exactly. And tell me again how it was just an invasion of Poland again. Mr. Cooper's just wrong about the actual history. Once again, I don't know that, and so my response here is I haven't heard Cooper contest these facts. I think he believes they were off-ramps to a wider world war, saving lives and not producing a more powerful Soviet Union. Okay. By the way, this is a perfectly fine discussion to have, and you may be right at what took place and what was the best possible outcome. But note, many opposing Cooper are calling him a Nazi sympathizer or Holocaust denier. Okay. I don't know if this guy was saying it to me or the other guy. Tom87 said he invaded 8 countries, none of which were England or America, both of which he wanted peace with. Churchill declared war on Germany, quote, to defend the sovereignty of Poland, unquote. Churchill declared war on Germany to defend the sovereignty of Poland. And then after World War II, he handed Poland over to the Soviet Union. LMAO, bro, keep being an NPC. So I don't know. I think he was saying that to the art guy, not me, but I'll be an NPC. Dr. Anik QH5DC said, just 8 minutes ago, to be fair, it was only a continental conflict in Europe before Great Britain got involved. Granted, Germany was probably always going to invade the Caucasus, but tens of millions, estimated 70 million people died after Great Britain entered the war. We'll just thumbs up that. I don't believe that. I mean, that's this is all to be debated. This is all stuff that you can. It was interesting to see, Dr. also said it was interesting to see Seth Dillon from Babylon Bee pearl clutch and make definitive judgments over edgy, hot tweets. Yeah, that's exactly it. We made that comment before because it does seem a bit hypocritical. Anyway, I hope everyone out there is doing good on this Sunday. JC is going to make some comments about bicyclists. All bicyclists and pedestrians are NPCs. This is bubbly, sparkly water. Is that my ad read for today? No. I hope you're having a good Sunday. I started off, got up, took care of the dogs, the cat, fed the chickens, made breakfast. 2 kids that are home. They both went to work. So one's working at an Italian chain restaurant. He's a cook, chef there, what have you. He's 18 years old. He's been doing that since he was 16. I don't know how they did it, but he's good. The other one works at a local ice creamery. Sandwiches. It's fantastic food. The owners are fat as can be, and rightly so. So anyway, those kids are out. Watched a little bit of football. Watched the bike race. Big bike race in Montreal this morning. I know you're all fantastically excited. Slovenian won it. And then 2 weeks. We got 2 weeks, people. We have the World Championships. You mentioned bikes, damn it. So I'm gonna bring them up again. Anyway, we're on YouTube. We're trying to stream simultaneously to Twitter. I hope it's going out there just fine. I'm going to play a few items here. Let's get to them. I thought we would start off with, because Douglas Murray, he mentioned Victor Davis Hanson. So I thought we would just start off with Victor Davis Hanson. And let's remove that there. Victor Davis Hanson and his kind of his defense of Churchill. So I think let me just enter that. I think this will work. Yeah, we'll be fine. We'll be fine with what we have here. Okay, this is 6 minutes. So granted, it's not long, but what I want you to, when you hear these people talking, are they taking ad hominem attacks? Are they just defeating? Because we went through the long, and by the way, Scott Horton just put out an interview with Daryl Cooper, and the word in there, one of them is Holocaust. We played many minutes, like almost, when I just broke down just the Holocaust stuff, it was like 30 minutes of just Holocaust, pogroms. And actually that's, I play another one here with Michael Shermer takes him on. And it's, you don't know, you criticize Daryl Cooper. And by the way, that's what I'm saying. You'd be perfectly fine. Go after the historical stuff. A lot of it is interpretation though, right? Or are we just looking at him being lazy with his research? And if you're complaining about him being lazy with his research, you better be spot on with your research on Daryl Cooper, right? Okay. So anyway, I will give Victor Davis Hanson some props here. First of all, for not going after Daryl. Now there's only 6 minutes. Maybe he does at some point, but it's just a clean interview, asking him the questions, and he'll tell you his own points. Hang on. We got some. I see it here. For me, it's a little echo. So let's make sure we don't have an echo going on here. Comments, monitor off. I think we're going there. Let me know if you can hear this.
Choices. One was the rise of Churchill in 1940 to leadership in the United Kingdom. That importance has come under some scrutiny lately in a recent podcast.
Let me fix one item here. We're going to do this. There we go. Audio good. Okay.
Episode by Tucker Carlson, in which he has a blogger guest, Daryl Cooper, questioned the importance of Churchill even.
And I think I'm just going to reiterate, I think the mistake that was made with Daryl Cooper was not pushing back against Tucker Carlson's comments, fawning as they were that he was an amazing historian, okay? One, it sets off all the other historians. If you're not coming out with the exact same thing, they're going to call you David Irving, and they're going to call you a crackpot. How dare you? And I would encourage you to go to listen to Tom Wood's interview with Daryl Cooper, where Tom is a doctor. He's got his doctorate in history, and he's like, it's fine. It's fine for other people to have these. Let me just say here for me personally, I'm an attorney, and I do law-splaining stuff, and there's one of the persons I've learned the most constitutional law from is Brian. Oh geez, now it just slipped my mind. It'll come to me. But he's a historian. He's not a legal scholar, but he just knows early American history. And Brian McClanahan. Okay, Brian McClanahan, Abbeville Institute. He's a professor somewhere as well. But he knows the constitutional stuff, especially the founding, just exceptionally well. And the way he breaks it down, I have relearned. I've gone back then, and it's spurred me on to learn some things that I didn't learn from my professors. It's not the way that they taught. And so anyway, just to deviate. But anyway, let's keep going.
Wonder whether it was Churchill himself who extended and exacerbated the war in Europe. What are your thoughts on Churchill's role?
Well, I think it's good to have, aired differences of opinion, but there has to be a common set of facts. And in this case, the person in reference apparently wasn't aware of the facts. Churchill came in on...
Okay, I totally agree. I think that's a seminal thing. Now, if there's additional leaflets or letters that you're not privy to, or that he could come up with, it's something, maybe it shapes, how things are, anecdotal evidence type of thing. Maybe KGB files, other NKV probably at the time for the Soviets. Other stuff that comes out that kind of gives it. We saw this, so much history as an example of right around this time, Yalta, and you had now it's just gonna Alger Hiss. Okay, Alger Hiss was part of FDR's administration. He was a fucking communist Soviet spy at the time. Okay, Whittaker Chambers, all this, and then there was the HUAC came about, and House of Un-American Activities Committee. That was a little bit different, but the Nixon, the pumpkin paper, I'm just giving you like bullet points here, and we can talk about this some other time. Pumpkin papers, and then there gets to be a whole trial, and he was guilty of defamation, actually, Alger Hiss, but he was basically considered to be a Soviet spy. But there was a lot of pushback in the mainstream media. They vilified Whittaker Chambers for years on end. Great book that he wrote, Witness, by the way. So there was that, and then there comes out the Black Book of Communism. There comes out all these other ones where the Soviet documents were, after the fall of the Soviet Empire, were being released, and you're able to see actual communications and cables about Alger Hiss, about Whittaker Chambers, and it's confirmed, right? So history can change on some of these things. I get it. Now, I don't know if Victor Davis Hanson if he listened to the interview. I would hope that to do this, you are listening to the interview, and I would grant that he probably
May 10th, as Prime Minister of 1940. And unfortunately, that was the day that Germany invaded through the Ardennes, and France fell in 6 weeks. At that point, everybody had panicked. The French
Let's go back there,
but there has to be a common set of facts. And in this case, the person in reference apparently wasn't aware of the facts. Churchill came in on May 10th as Prime Minister of 1940. And unfortunately, that was the day that Germany invaded through the Ardennes.
Sorry to interrupt on this, but this is what we talked about. Because remember, Daryl says primarily being an invasion of Poland. Okay, so I want to. These guys need to give him the benefit of his words, even. Okay, and he's not saying Churchill was responsible for anything other than after Poland.
Ardennes,
blah blah blah.
and France fell in 6 weeks. At that point, everybody had panicked. The French were frantically saying, we need help. Looked like the British Army at Dunkirk was going to be wiped out. And there were people in his select war cabinet that wanted to find some way to stop it. So they were thinking that Mussolini, who had not declared war on Poland, might be a third party. So this person in question said, well, even Churchill was thinking about, he wasn't. What he said was to members of Halifax and others, if you want to talk with Mussolini, go ahead. And I'm not going to stop it, but it's not going to lead anywhere because they are in a position of strength.
It would be interesting. This is what Daryl Cooper needs to flush this out, which is, and he said on the podcast, and I heard him saying afterwards, and maybe this is his mistake, which is he wasn't ready for this, and he's done a lot of work. He's not even ready to put his podcast out. He's still getting everything. And I hope he takes all this criticism and then puts it as part of what he's going to do. Because if he says he's got letters, as an example, or there's communications back and forth, and with those communications, he has proof of this. Now that's a different story.
What I'm getting at is that of all the people in British politics in the late 30s, Churchill was about the only one who said Stanley Baldwin is going to get us into a war because they were not upping fighter production, bomber production, ship production, and the Army was in dire straits. They were broke, and he was saying that this projects weakness. Well, when other revisionists look at this, they say he's a warmonger. He's a warmonger. He wants to build weapons. He wants to go to war. No, what he wanted to do was prevent war. The old Vegetarists dictate that if you want peace, prepare for war. And so he was the only one who, had they listened to him, they might have been able to deter Hitler. At various times, Hitler, on 2 occasions, right during the invasion of Poland on September 1st, and he presented the Western democracies with a fait accompli. Then there was a phony war. He stopped. He and Stalin carved up Poland. Then he came over and said, well, you know, I'm willing to discuss it. And Churchill was not a prime minister, but he had a voice. And Chamberlain at this point was, you fooled me so many times. Saarland, Rhineland, Anschluss, Sudetenland, no more. And Chamberlain actually got kind of good. But people look at that and they'll say, see, Hitler was willing to talk. Well, it was sort of like shooting somebody and said, you want another bullet? I'm willing to talk about a second bullet, third, fourth, fifth. The other time, as I said, he wanted to talk was after he had absorbed France, the Low Countries. And he had what is now the EU. And there were people saying, the Soviet Union is on his side. America's not going to come in. We're the only people. And he's got the whole continent. And he's got Russia on his side, de facto. Right. And so Churchill said, and that's why you can't talk to him. But then he was the only person who said, how is he going to get to England? He can't. That famous dictum of the First Lord of the Admiralty during the Napoleonic Wars, when they asked him, will Napoleon invade? He said, my lords, I don't know. All I can tell you is he will not come by sea. If you can't come by sea, you can't come. And so at that point, Hitler said, well, I'd like to have some type of arrangement with the British Empire. What he was really saying was, I can't beat them by sea, and I can't get there by sea. I can't beat them by air, and he tried during the Blitz. Therefore, maybe we can have a deal. And that's the way he thought. But if you're someone else who has an agenda, you look at that and say, well, they offered Churchill 2 types of war. And then the other thing is he said,
okay, well, I mean, you're saying there's off-ramps. He couldn't have attacked Britain. Britain would have been completely fine.
Churchill wanted to wage total war. This is after he had destroyed Poland. And as far as terrorist bombing, that was an argument as well. Hitler started civilian bombing by bombing Warsaw. And when he went into the Low Countries, he destroyed 10 square miles in Rotterdam of the inner city. This is before the British started to retaliate. And then when he said, well, the British were trying to fly across the Channel, mostly with 2 engine bombers with no fighter escort. Then occupied France being intercepted every 100 miles by Luftwaffe bases. Then all the way in Germany, and then they had about 5 minutes of gas around the target, and they were very ineffectual. All of left at 39, 40, 41. They were so ineffectual that when we came over there in March, April, May of 1942, they said, daylight bombing, no fighter escort, high level precision with the winds, and it's not going to work. You're going to get wiped out. You've got to go in small groups at night and an area bomb, just get in the area and get out. So, but that cannot be interpreted as a terrorist who, preempts a new tactic to hurt Hitler. It's just absurd.
Okay, there you go. Absurd. I don't know. I mean, could be not. It would be nice to have actually a debate on this. I think that might be interesting. Let's go. We're going to play. Let's actually go to Michael Shermer. So Michael Shermer is kind of was a libertarian. He's I think an atheist, skeptic, so to speak. Dave Smith and I broke down an interview with him and Reason Magazine Nick Gillespie. Check that out. That's a pretty good episode. And Dave was pretty harsh on him, especially this was like during the COVID times. They talked about Ayn Rand. They just talked about a bunch of libertarian stuff. And I think he's just he's grown out of libertarianism, perfectly fine, but he's grown to be more, I think, of a lefty type of person. Okay. Not very much what I would be considered interesting. Okay. Let me just double check here. And I don't know why this isn't showing good on the chat. Let me just double check here. Nope, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. But hang on. Yeah, let's do this. Let's get back to the chat just a little bit. I think I could do this. Okay. Where are we going to be here? I'm still working on all this stuff, people. So we're still trying to get our feet wet. How we figure all this out. Okay, so let's pop this out. Okay. Talked about bikes. So many people are kind of based. Just assumed Daryl was being biased. Sorry. So many people who are kind of based just assumed Daryl was being a biased Hitler apologist. Made me realize how bad most people's critical thinking skills are, or how easily they allow dominant narratives to do the thinking for them. That was JC. And Gordon said, it's not terrorism when America does. Yeah, the new layout looks cool. Thank you. This is an interesting comment here. It's not terrorism when America does it. That's kind of, we talked about that before. And notice what he said there. He said, well, Hitler was doing it. Okay. Which, okay, I guess. I mean, that's, so Hitler was doing it, so we get to do it as well. So maybe he's not. Okay, let's get into this interview. Or it's Shermer's just doing his own talk here, okay? So he starts off about a few things, and then he breaks in. Let me just double check and make sure I'm not going to, nope, everything should be fine. Let's get right into it. Here's where he starts. Let's do 5.25. I'm not going to play the whole thing, by the way, because he argues against a straw man hard here.
So what exactly did this pseudo-historian Cooper tell Carlson, who nods along in seeming approval of everything he says? Oh, only that Winston Churchill was a psychopath, a warmonger who was the, quote, chief villain of the Second World War, who unfortunately forced Hitler into an unwanted war with the West, even though he, Churchill, knew that Hitler only ever wanted to combat Russian communism by invading the USSR. After, annexing Austria, the Sudetenland, Bohemia, Lithuania, and Czechoslovakia, and then invading Poland, Denmark, the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, France, Norway, Yugoslavia, and Greece. Oh, that warmonger Churchill. How could he not see what a peace-loving man was Hitler, just like his predecessor, Neville Chamberlain?
It is an interesting concept here. You got a libertarian who you'd think would be maybe a little bit more on the anti-war stuff. And I almost forgive Douglas Murray, Victor Davis Hanson, some of the, and then some of the other ones are just British apologists for taking more, they're neocons, right? They're neocons, constant. I mean, some of this, and I think Clint made a good point on his podcast today, or that I listened to it today. I think it came out. About the reason they're pushing back, he believes, is more along the lines because the narratives are lining up with Poland. Poland, Ukraine, and Russia. Okay, so you've got, there could be, now there's a threat that we could be in World War III with Putin here, and so the justification is like the Polish guarantee that the British had. We have a similar type of things with with NATO, and then with the Ukraine. I mean, I'm not an expert on this. It sounds, I get it. And so you see a lot of this pushback. But so what's Shermer? Why is he so definitive? It's because also what you can't ever question, and this is the problem, right? If you even just question, remember, Kissen and a bunch of these people, they're like, oh, they're just asking questions. That's the new bogeyman. You can't even do that anymore. And anytime I'm just asking questions, you are really an anti-Semite. Shermer's in that same boat. And so a lot of it is that as well, because if you start to question maybe some of the narratives here about good and bad, instead of just like you have one group that's, and I just heard a clip here, it blew me away. It was Vinny and Adam from Patrick Bet-David's show. And Vinny he's coming over to the right side, and Adam is just blown away about how you don't understand this. And because Adam, it's just, there's pure evil, and then there's pure goodness. And those are the only two things fighting. This is Lord of the Rings. This is what it is. It's nothing more. But anyway, let's keep going here.
Chamberlain did at Munich, when the West could have stopped Hitler then and there. Even his own generals plotted to assassinate him and depose the Nazi regime, knowing as they did that Germany would not stand a chance in a war. As for the Holocaust, Cooper is simply plagiarizing David Irving.
Okay, that's the first bogeyman. Now, remember the arguments? Remember the arguments with Seth there was no mention of the Holocaust. Now, there actually was a little bit, which was talking about Germany not having any foresight, that they said, hey, maybe we just kill them all. Okay, and that gets attributed, or Andrew Roberts is going to talk about that a little bit. So and once again, that was one snippet that he said, and we played 30 minutes yesterday, 30 hours. I mean, there was so much more conversation about the Holocaust, the pogroms specifically, and then let's go.
And the other Holocaust deniers, when he claims that the camps were built to house all of the prisoners of war captured in the early and successful days of the good and necessary war against the Russians, excuse me, and says Cooper, quote, were completely unprepared to deal with the millions and millions of prisoners of war, and they just threw these people into camps, and millions of people ended up dead, close quote. Yeah, sure, they ended up dead. I wonder how that happened. Oh, maybe those gas chambers with the Zyklon B blue staining on the bricks gives us a clue. Oh, well, you see, those gas chambers were used for delousing the clothes of the infected prisoners. But then the Nazis, in their mercy, decided it was better to kill the prisoners to put an end to their unfortunate suffering, rather than dragging it out over time. Yeah, sure. Cooper is not a bullshitter like Carlson. He's a liar and a denier. None of this is true. And if he knew anything about history, which he clearly doesn't, he would know it's not true. Has he never heard of the Holocaust by bullets? This is the millions of Jews.
Remember, we played a clip yesterday. We took a portion of one of it. He read 3 different people's accounts. And he read one account where they went for 36 hours straight or so, shooting, rifling Jews in pits. Okay. And then the lady's out there looking for her dead husband. All right. At 30-some thousand, we walked through that with Daryl Cooper. Now, this is a historian claiming that Daryl doesn't know his facts. So once again, did you do your fact check on anything other than just this podcast? Only a little bit of this podcast at all?
Gypsies and other ethnic groups in Poland, Ukraine, and other territories conquered by the German army, murdered by the Einsatzgruppen. These are the special police battalions that followed the Wehrmacht into these conquered lands, going through every city, town, and village, rounding up Jews and others and murdering them one at a time, or lining them up in front of pits they were forced to dig and shooting them all at once.
That was what we talked about yesterday from Daryl Cooper's own mouth. And goddamn that guy, he put music underneath it and it demonetized that stream for me.
For example, in a report from Einsatzgruppe A during the winter of 1941-1942, 2,000 Jews were killed in Estonia, 70,000 in Latvia, 136,421 in Lithuania. Yeah, they counted them one by one. They have detailed records. 41,000 in Belarus. On November 14th, 1941, Einsatzgruppe B reported an additional 45,467 shootings. And on July 31st, 1942, the governor of Belarus reported 65,000 Jews were killed the previous 2 months. Einsatzgruppe C estimated that they killed 95,000 by December of 1941. Finally, Einsatzgruppe D reported on April 8th, 1942, a total of 92,000 killed for a grand total of 546,888 dead, or 500,000 plus in less than 1 year. Numerous eyewitness accounts from the Einsatzgruppe can be found in a remarkably graphic book entitled The Good Old Days, The Holocaust, as seen by its perpetrators and bystanders, by Ernst Klee and his colleagues. It's an edited volume. It's a deeply disturbing book in which they present actual statements, letters, and so on from different Einsatzgruppe members. For example, here's a statement of a teleprinter engineer named Kiebach from Einsatzgruppe C. Quote, in Ravno, I had to participate in the first shooting. Each member of the firing squad...
I don't know. Should we keep playing this? I mean, I think he's quoting from the same book that Daryl Cooper read from that we played yesterday. So anyway, this goes on. He starts out here, started in 5 minutes. This thing's 25 minutes. He goes on just laying out how the Holocaust is real. Fine. I had to comment on this. It was just so frustrating. I'm like, you're arguing with straw men. You did no research on Daryl Cooper to know, and you're doing, okay, so the Holocaust, you think it's real? I personally do. And I think Daryl Cooper does. Matter of fact, what did we play on the intro there? This is what it is.
What would you do? You're going to get tired of hearing me ask that question by the time I'm finished telling this story, but it's the question we need to ask ourselves over and over if we are ever going to have any hope of understanding how the immigration of a few thousand Jews to a lightly developed area of the Eastern Mediterranean in the late 1800s has grown into the most bitter and intractable conflict in the world today. Any fight that goes on this long suffers from a lack of empathy, with the list of grievances so long on both sides that you're going to find plenty of reasons to hate whoever you want to hate, if that's what you're looking for.
There you go. If that's what you're looking for. So let's go up here, because I think we'll take. That's all we're going to do for Shermer. And once again, Shermer, he's laying out facts that are perfectly fine, but you're putting them in into a somewhat. If you want to argue this with David Irving, please. I think that's maybe the person, Top Lobster. Maybe that's who you want to argue against. But not anymore. Art says, I think that was the guy we did the thing. Welcome back here. And I don't know if you just came in. He says, or she. This has all been well documented and written about, including by people in Hitler's inner circle. Yeah. So I don't know what you're specifically commenting about. If you're talking about the Holocaust, completely fine. That's my once again. And by the way, I appreciated what you wrote yesterday. I'm not a historian. There's facts out there that I think, like I said, there's new things that could come and go, and we can have different interpretations. That's perfectly fine. The problem I'm having is the gaslight. And why? Why are you calling him a Nazi sympathizer, which he does in here at some point, and an apologist or a Holocaust denier, when you haven't done your research on him? And I guess the only thing that gets me so worked up about this, that I even feel like I'm defending, is I listened to so many hours of Daryl Cooper on the Fear and Loathing in the New Jerusalem podcast, because I listened to it once, and then I listened to it again, and I've gone back and found other nuggets with it. It's deep, and there was never one moment in there that I felt he was disrespectful about the Holocaust at all. Matter of fact, he drags it out in painstaking detail and commentary so that you understand what it was like for a Jew in Europe at that time and why they felt like they wanted to get over to Israel, perhaps. Okay? It's one context, one aspect of this whole thing. Okay. Hi, YouTube has been showing more ads lately. And let me take you know what? I may have automatic, because I'm doing it different. It may have thrown an ad in there, JC, during the show. I don't want it to be live on a replay, perhaps. So I'll take care of that going forward. I appreciate you doing that there. But how are you going to try to, I'm talking about Israel. I'm talking about Jews, communists, talking about capitalists. We all want to get our dollars. And how am I going to get my dollars if I don't? Look at this. JC's very encouraging and welcoming. Okay, now let's. I want to say this. Let me go to this one. Here we go. Constantin Kissen. He did a debate, and this is the title of the debate. Constantin Kissen exposes pro-Palestinian YouTuber in heated debate. Now, I watched this. This is my buddy Safadine Amos, okay? Let's go. Yeah, that's the right one there. Why is it not showing better? There we go. No, that's not right either. I don't know. We'll fix it maybe in a second here. That's my buddy Safadine Amos, and it is a horrible interview. And I don't mean that from Constantin's point of view. I mean that from the point of view of Safadine. He's horrible in this thing. He's embarrassing. He takes, and I think Constantin is wrong on many aspects. And, I know why this is right. Let's do it this way. Now we're gonna have to fix this. So Constantin is horrible on many aspects, and but Safadine was so bad on his arguments with him. It was actually embarrassing. It was very, very embarrassing to watch. Yet I did. So I maybe go watch that as well. What I did want to play here, because he played. It's with Clint Russell's. Let's do this, man. This is the. Okay, come on, people. I don't know. Are the kids home? Is that why the internet's a little shaky? Let me see. Liberty lockdown. Clint just had this one today, and so maybe I'll be able to find this quote here. Let's see if we can find this where it's at. Okay, I think I could come up with this. Maybe we'll be able to find this here. Man, I don't know what happened. It's probably because I'm streaming, so the internet gets a little chop. You know, I'll have to come back to it. I'll have to find it and come back to it. Okay, let's play some of these clips from Andrew Roberts and see how he is going on this one. And I'm going to skip around through here. Hopefully we'll do this just fine. But anyway, let's, now we've got to, it's all out here. It's all the shit's getting real. Almost there, people. This is live broadcasting. Right? Okay, let's go.
We had wanted to.
And by the way, I'll say maybe this is one of the. This is why I'm such a dumbass. This is one of the best interviews of some pushback from what you think of prominent people.
To bring him here to discuss with you individually. I have a one-on-one debate because surely that's the best way of putting things to a test. But he said that he doesn't want to debate you. We failed, but we're going to try to do the next best thing. We're going to show you the clips of what he said and ask you to respond directly. Before we begin, I wonder what you think of Tucker Carlson's basic point that it can be difficult to talk honestly about people who are national heroes in the way that Churchill was. You wrote a book which reveals many uncomfortable things about Churchill. I mean, when you were writing, I don't know, for example, about his botched response to Hitler's Norway maneuver or things like that, in your book, you do come across quite often Churchill making a pretty bad mistake or making a wrong misjudgment. Did you think to yourself, actually, here was only so far I can go as a historian because I am dealing with a nation's hero?
No, I didn't feel like that at all. I felt that Churchill made a lot of mistakes and admitted to it. He wrote to his wife in January 1916, I should have made nothing if I had not made mistakes. And actually, the process of learning from his mistakes was one of the things that set him above normal politicians and also put him in a position by the time he became Prime Minister in May 1940, where he was a better politician and statesman because of it. So actually, the mistakes are an important part of Winston Churchill.
And what about his character? I mean, Daryl Cooper was saying that he was a psychopath, was one word he used, but saying that he was certainly an alcoholic. And, we've seen there's lots of evidence of how much he drank, which by today's standards would ring alarm bells. I mean, it's often said that great figures have got some moral corruption. How did you find it?
Well, I think the point that you made, by today's standards, Winston Churchill can't be judged by today's standards.
Okay, maybe. Right, maybe. But then neither can Hitler, right? Hitler can't because he was taking meth at the time. I think that's ridiculous because all that is today's standards, we know how alcohol can affect you, okay? And so this is, once again, this is where this guy, Andrew Roberts, probably great, did great work. Obviously, people, laud him for whatever because he's got a British accent. But you can't just say that the alcohol thing. It's thin. It's you've got. He was a drunk. Let's just say it.
It's no historical figure should. They should be judged by the standards of their own time as much as possible. And the fact is that, yes, he drank an enormous amount, but he could take it. He had a rhinocerine capacity for alcohol. There's only one moment in the whole of the Second World War, one day, when...
Once again, I'm going to call bullshit on this. You don't know that day. And I wish this interview would say...
When he got drunk, and that's an extraordinary thing considering the pressures and the stresses and strains that he was under. So, as far as psychopath is concerned, that I think says more about Daryl Cooper than it does about Winston Churchill, frankly.
So let's go straight on to the points he made. He can't be with us physically, but we can bring him on in a clip. Now let's go to his main point. He was saying that Churchill was the chief villain of the Second World War.
But I told him, maybe trying to provoke him a little bit, that I thought Churchill was the chief villain of the Second World War. Now, he didn't kill the most people. He didn't commit the most atrocities. But I believe, and I think when you really get into it and tell the story right and don't leave anything out, you see that he was primarily responsible for that war becoming what it did, becoming something other than an invasion of Poland. Or just, at every step of the way, like people are very often, I find, surprised to learn. There's a two-step process.
Well,
right?
why don't you just make the case for that? Okay, so you've made your statement. A lot of people are thinking, well, wait a second. You said Churchill, my childhood hero, the guy with the cigar.
Yeah. Well, and the next thought that comes into their head is that, you're saying Churchill was the chief villain, therefore his enemies, Adolf Hitler and so forth, were
Stalin,
the protagonists, right?
Yeah.
They're the good guys if you think he's a villain. That's not the case. That's not what I'm saying. Germany, look, they put themselves into a position, and Adolf Hitler is chiefly responsible for this, but his whole regime is responsible for it, that when they went into the East in 1941, they launched a war where they were completely unprepared to deal with the millions and millions of prisoners of war,
of local political prisoners and so forth that they were going to have to handle. They went in with no plan for that.
His point was basically Hitler was happy with his conquest in the East, and he was all set to sending notes to Britain saying, look, let's not fight, I don't want to go here, but that Churchill wanted war. He doesn't want to fight Britain. He feels it's going to weaken Europe. When we've got this huge threat to the East, the communist threat over there, and then he starts firing off peace proposals, says, let's not do this, we can't do this. Winston Churchill wanted a war. He wanted to fight Germany. So let's talk about this point in history that he points to where he thinks war could have been averted, and it was Churchill who was spoiling for the fight.
Couldn't be more wrong. It was Adolf Hitler who was intending from 1933, when he became Chancellor, onwards, to rip up the Versailles Treaty and to set Germany on a path to hegemony in Europe. That's what.
Okay, I mean, rip up the Versailles Treaty. I don't begrudge him actually for that.
Why he entered the Rhineland in 1936, why he had Anschluss with Austria in 1938, and also why he took the Sudetenland and ultimately Czechoslovakia in 1938 and March 1939. It was and why he invaded Poland, of course, in September 1939. It was a clear attempt to dominate Europe. What Winston Churchill had been doing all of that time was warning against this with extraordinary foresight. And he also said that it was important to rearm. Because he saw one day the fact that there was going to be a war. And after the guarantee to Poland in April 1939 that was made by the British government, not the one that Churchill was in, but nonetheless was made by the Chamberlain government, when Hitler invaded Poland, that triggered a war. And until he disgorged Poland, the British government had every right not to entertain peace negotiations with Hitler, and they didn't.
What about the point that Hitler didn't expect Britain to declare war, that after all Chamberlain had pretty much given him everything he wanted at Munich? So sure, Britain had a treaty with Poland saying, look, we'll come to your defence if you're invaded. But Darryl Cooper says that all the evidence shows that Hitler didn't expect the invasion of Poland to lead to war because he didn't think that Britain or Churchill would carry out this.
Because Hitler made a massive miscalculation, despite...
Okay. So, we just got... we just got confirmation that Darryl Cooper is right about that. I think Roberts pushed back on that on the Piers Morgan show, saying that that's not true. But he's saying that Hitler made a mistake. Okay. But we heard Victor Davis Hanson also saying that there's no way he's going. By the way, I don't know. I'm just giving you alternate explanations, and I thought this interview was actually much better because the guy pushed back, not even maybe meaning to, other than to have a good conversation.
Having been given this very clear guarantee about Britain going to war over Poland, because Hitler ignored that or didn't believe in it, that can hardly be blamed on Winston Churchill. I mean, that's Hitler's.
I think it was on Piers where and maybe it's in this one, where he talks about the same thing, and he's like, well, we had to do I think it was Piers. We had to do the Polish, the war guarantee because his basic. I'm just going to sum it up to, he's a British gentleman, and we honor. Yeah, okay. Well, Hitler didn't expect you to have to honor that, and you didn't have to honor it. I mean, as someone posted out in here, what was the result of that? Well, Poland goes to Russia, and then it's under their stronghold forever. So, or the Soviet Union. And by the way, all I'm saying is there's different perspectives here. Go see Man in the High Castle for alternate realities.
Fault, isn't it?
I guess the point Darryl Cooper was trying to make is that Hitler didn't actually want any more war, that he would and could have stopped there, and that he had no intention to expand to the north or to the west. And it was only Churchill who basically kept pushing it, and as a result of that, brought the World War II to what it was.
Well, the whole fact is that, of course, in April 1940, when Hitler invaded Scandinavia and Denmark, and then when he actually unleashed Blitzkrieg in the west on the 10th of May 1940, Winston Churchill wasn't Prime Minister. So how on earth could it be Churchill's fault that Hitler invaded all these countries? It doesn't make sense.
That's not what he said. And that's not what the interviewer just asked him. He said, after this point, going forward, that's what Darryl said. And so you pushing it back there, Mr. Roberts,
he only
doesn't
became
help.
Prime Minister later on, after the invasion of these countries like Belgium and Luxembourg and Holland had taken place.
Right. And the idea that Churchill basically wanted war, that, as you say, he was warning about Hitler years in advance. He was, as you detail in your book, he was like almost prophetic in predicting what would happen. But some would see him as being bellicose, as somebody who you didn't need to go over there and take the fight to Hitler. Perhaps it was possible for Britain to have said, look, we deplore this, but no, we're not going to put any British lives at risk.
He did not take the war to Hitler. Hitler took the war to the West. The guarantee to Poland.
I think that's that guy's opinion. Okay, I don't know that he's necessarily putting Daryl Cooper's comments in there, which means that there's more than just Daryl Cooper out there.
It was a guarantee to an independent sovereign country that had not in any way provoked the attack that Hitler unleashed against it. And so the British government had, which I say Churchill wasn't even in at the time of the guarantee, had every right to guarantee Poland. It doesn't, setting a tripwire essentially, which is what it was, is not a warmongering thing to do unless the totalitarian power wants to trip over the wire.
On the point that Churchill came to power, what kind of regime was Nazi Germany then? I mean, was it? You could argue, of course, and I'm not quite sure if Daryl Cooper does make this point, but it was a bit of, the Anschluss itself. It wasn't exactly a sort of full-on invasion. It was perhaps, I don't know, there might be an interpretation saying he wanted to unite the German-speaking peoples or something, but it could have been okay.
That's true up until the 15th of March 1939. But then when he goes into Prague, when Hitler takes the rump of Czechoslovakia and Bohemia and so on, that is far beyond just the Sudeten Germans. At that point, he takes Slavs into the Third Reich, something, and of course he had been ranting against Slavs.
Whoa! Why are you taking the Slavs?
For years beforehand. That was the point at which the West, certainly the British people, recognised that Adolf Hitler was lying essentially when he said that he had no territorial ambitions in Europe beyond bringing the Germans back into Germany. And so that's also the point, of course, that people turned to Churchill and recognised that the warnings that he had been giving consistently, eloquently, not for wanting war, but for wanting rearmament in order to deter war, had been right all along.
Let's go to another one of Daryl Cooper's points. He accuses Churchill of terrorism.
The reason I resent Churchill so much for it is that he kept this war going when he had no way to go back and fight this war. All he had were bombers. He was literally, by 1940, sending bomber fleets to go firebomb the Black Forest, just to burn down sections of the Black Forest, just rank terrorism, going through and starting to, what eventually became just a carpet bombing, saturation bombing of civilian neighborhoods, to kill, the purpose of which was to kill as many civilians as possible.
Yeah, the Black Forest attacks were nothing like the worst bombing we'd ever seen in history. The Germans...
He didn't say it was the worst in history. He just, are you saying they didn't happen? Victor Davis Hanson, remember he made the point that they had to do these bombing raids, night, and it just kind of, you're indiscriminate because you're so, you don't have much choice about how we're getting shot down. So you're doing these at night, So, I mean, I'm just, one side, the other. I want you to push back on this as a historian that, and it's fine to do your interpretation that it's whatever, but what about the factual
had already bombed Warsaw by then, Rotterdam, they'd bombed open cities. The Black Forest, where, by the way,
Yeah, Hitler was a piece of shit.
RAF had intelligence reports.
And once again, I mean, yeah. Are you going to, and this is maybe Gaza, right here? Well, I mean, look, they elected their people, the Hamas. So you just indiscriminately bomb them. It's all perfectly fine. I don't know the German people, and I know it's 1940s. It was much different than
reports of various munitions that were in the Black Forest. This was not intended as a terror attack. Anyhow, later on in the war, there were some absolutely devastating attacks on German civilians.
Whoops.
But first of all, the Germans had unleashed this form of warfare, and secondly, it was not intended.
he just gave the Hitler made me do it
to be terrorism, and also thirdly, it was very small scale anyway because the Black Forest didn't catch fire.
But the bombing campaigns in general, one of the themes that he makes is that the more distance we have from the Second World War, the more we're able to look back on it with dispassion. So I remember not so long ago we had a controversy about Bomber Harris, about should this man really be given a statue, should he really be heralded, should he be really seen as a national champion, when in fact he just sent men in planes to go and bomb civilians. So already we have seen, in the last sort of 15, 20 years, people looking at those bombing campaigns through another lens.
Yeah, but what people don't look at is the graphs, which you can actually see in my book, Storm of War, which proves that the bombing campaign levelled off the rate of increase in war munitions production from going right up to plateauing. And so it was essential. And maybe it's because we no longer have people who remember the Second World War still alive today who are able to say that nobody knew how that war was going to end, and that you had to fight it with every means you had. And the munitions factories that we did take out were absolutely essential to war production and material. And frankly, it's very difficult to ever as an historian, see the world through the eyes of people now long dead. But nonetheless, imagine if the Second World War had been won by Darrell Cooper's hero instead of Winston Churchill.
Oh God! See, that's who's his hero? Who is it? Name him. It's not Hitler. He's already talked about that. And if you listen to any of his podcast stuff, you know it's not Hitler. Mussolini? It's such a beyond you to do this.
He also had an interesting...
Okay, that was a weird cut there. I don't know what happened. Maybe he had to go pee. Maybe this guy said, wait. Maybe there was a comment and then they decided to take it out.
About genocide, not a word he uses. He basically describes it as a logistical problem that got out of control. Here's the clip.
You have like letters as early as July, August 1941 from commandants of these makeshift camps that they're setting up for these millions of people who are surrendering or people they're around.
Now, I believe Darrell's bringing this up as a way of not excusing Hitler. Okay, and so I don't know.
And so it's 2 months after, a month or two after Barbarossa was launched, and they're writing back to the high command in Berlin saying, we can't feed these people. We don't have the food to feed these people. And one of them actually says, rather than wait for them all to slowly starve this winter, wouldn't it be more humane to just finish them off quickly now? And so this is like 2 months into the invasion, right? And like my view on this, I argue with my Zionist interlocutors about this all the time with regard to the current war in Gaza. Look, man, like maybe you as the Germans, you felt like you had to invade to the east. Maybe you thought that Stalin was such a threat, or that if he launched a surprise attack and seized the oil fields in Romania, that you would now not have the fuel to actually respond and you'd be crippled and all of Europe would be under threat and whatever it was that like maybe you thought you had to do that. But at the end of the day, you launched that war with no plan to care for the millions and millions of civilians and prisoners of war that were going to come under your control. And millions of people died because of that, right?
Just utterly morally bereft, frankly. Some 3.5 million Soviet prisoners of war were taken in the first 6 weeks of Operation Barbarossa. And the idea that the German generals and the German general staff, who were tremendously efficient, it has to be said, had no idea about what to do with large numbers of prisoners is complete tripe.
Okay, he just said generals and general staff had no idea, okay?
They knew perfectly well, but they didn't care. You look at Hitler's speeches, both public and private, and you realise when he talks about Slavs and Untermensch and so on, let alone Jews, of course he was going to kill millions of them. And that was the way that there was going to be the creation of Lebensraum, living space, in the East, in places like Ukraine and Belarus, where this new master race of German Aryans were going to live and rule for 1,000 years. The idea that the deaths of Soviet prisoners of war was some kind of an accident because of lack of foresight is complete rot.
But what about the letters that Darrell Cooper cites of German commanders saying, look, we hadn't quite worked this out, this is a logistical problem, we've taken all these guys prisoners, we don't know what to do with them. He sort of presents a kind of logical...
These are captains and majors. They weren't allowed into the...
Remember, we go back to the start here, and he says the majors, then the generals, and now these are just captains and majors. These are this. He said staff before, right? He referenced staff, and now when there's pushback, he's like, yeah, so fine. There were these letters. The people on the front, the people in these killing camps that it turned out to be, they were the ones saying this. So they were not. So yes, maybe Hitler's whole idea of all I'm saying is your desire to have him be so wrong, you can't admit anything, in which that is the problem. When you can't take admissions of some sort, you said it was the most ridiculous thing ever, and now it's yeah, okay, but now it's not the right person that it's in here. He explains his
overall strategic thinking of Hitler and his immediate lieutenants.
But that's not what the point was. That's not what you said at the beginning of that clip until you got pushed. Was this letter correct?
The point he makes is Churchill's motives, suggesting, of course, that he was perhaps controlled, but by higher forces. He doesn't quite say who they are.
He sort of does, doesn't he? Because, listen to the...
This is everyone's favorite stuff here, because now you get to say you ask questions when you talk about money. Jewish financiers, you know what that is.
To the clip.
But then as time goes on, you read stories about Churchill going bankrupt and needing money getting bailed out by people who shared his interests, in terms of Zionism, but also his hostility. I think his hostility to put it this way, I think his hostility to Germany was real. I don't think that he necessarily had to be bribed to have that feeling, but I think he was, to an extent, put in place by people, the financiers, by a media complex that wanted to make sure that he was the guy who was representing Britain in that conflict for a reason.
I mean, this is classic conspiracy theory, and pretty nutty too, frankly. The idea that Winston Churchill, a man of so much self-belief and who had an entire political philosophy, was going to be bribed by Zionist financiers and the media complex. By the way, what was the media complex? You had some very good anti-appeasement magazines like The Spectator, but overall the newspapers in the
anti-appeasement magazines, okay? Pro-war in a sense, right?
1930s ridiculed and mocked Winston Churchill because they were totally opposed to his stance on appeasement. And it wasn't until the invasion of Prague that we mentioned earlier in the March of 1939 that the newspapers came round to support Churchill and try to get him into the cabinet, which didn't, of course, happen until the outbreak of war in September 1939. But the phrase about Zionist financiers is a dog whistle, frankly, an anti-Semitic dog whistle. And the problem with it, apart from how loathsome it is in and of itself, is actually it's also completely untrue, not least because the financiers who did support him, people like Bernie Baruch and Sir Henry Strakosch, were not Zionists. So what he's really saying is Jewish financiers, and I think we all can recognise what that's all about.
No, so look, I think there might be some, because just going back here, maybe you don't have all the facts, okay, on that specific issue. I know Daryl Cooper went very deep with his Zion Fear and Loathing in the New Jerusalem podcast, which talks about the creation of Israel. And so, it would be interesting to see. And by the way, okay, so Daryl Cooper, there is a tweet. Let's actually go there. I'm going to, hang on. I'll go here why I bring this up here. So let me go to Twitter because Daryl Cooper actually talks about that exact thing here just today. And then I'll answer some of your questions. Martyr Maid is a weird name to spell. Okay. Noam Dwarman makes a comment here, okay? And then Daryl Cooper actually responds to it. So let me see if I can do this. Okay, let's go to Cam2 browser. There we go. So Noam says the implication that World War II was a manifestation of Zionist ambition and money is alarming to any Jew working with a working antenna. Oh yeah, that's gross. And it's doubly concerning in the current world and domestic political climate. Make it triple when it's picked up and weaponized by Candace Owens and Jake Shield types. I mean, you people are just so on the ADL bandwagon. I saw more conspiracy-minded anti-Semitic content. Anti-Semitic, you can't question anything. Content this past 9/11 that perhaps the rest of my life combined. Noam, when were you born? What year were you born? I guarantee you it wasn't the most. Daryl actually understands this, and everyone ought to be able to. Anyone who can't is oblivious, perhaps willfully, to a larger dynamic playing out all around us. Okay, so Daryl comments here, and he says, maybe it would help to know which part you find objectionable. A, that there were wealthy British Zionists and an organized British Zionist movement advocating war with Germany. B, that some of it's interesting that they went A, B, and C instead of 1, 2, 3. B, that some of those men saved Churchill from financial ruin and loss of his family estate in 1938 and 1940. Or C, that they expected anything in return for such a generous gift. Only the last point is unproven. But I don't see any reason we shouldn't be able to question it in the same way we question any politician receiving a large, apparently no strings attached payoff. If Sheldon Adelson gives Trump campaign $100 million, and Trump then moves the embassy to Jerusalem and recognizes the Golan Heights, it's not proof of anything, but it is fair to ask whether one had anything to do with the other. most people would even, and by the way, this is the questions that got Trump impeached, which was quid pro quo money that, investigate Biden giving money to Ukraine, right? Or getting money from Ukraine. His son was getting money from Ukraine. Investigate him. That's the asking questions. What was given for that money, right? You've got to always ask that part. That's why we have, ridiculous as they are, campaign finance laws. Most people would even ask if it's fair to assume that. And while I understand that you and many people have special sensitivities about those issues, and for reasons for some of which are valid, we're past the point of being able to scare people away from them with accusations, implications of anti-Semitism, a concept which has lost its force in direct proportion to its abuse and its definition expanding to include meanings other than someone who dislikes Jews. Yeah, if you guys want to check it out at all, I've done a whole podcast series with Pete Quinones, who you can dislike or like. I have major differences with him on stuff, but personally I like him. On Leo Frank, okay, a total a situation down in in Atlanta, a pervert, and the ADL and Jewish people are still coming out trying to defend him for some ungodly reason when he was completely a pervert. Okay, so I'm going to play you this clip here. This is from Clint's show. There we go. Let's play this real quick. This is Constantin Kissen making a comment about Daryl Cooper.
For now, on the mainstream right, the taboo against associating with illiterate Nazi apologists of the type that Carson's just hosted has held up remarkably well.
Illiterate. He called Daryl Cooper illiterate. Amazing.
Yeah, but my point to Clint, whether I sent it to him in the chat, was the Tower Gang chat, which is, he said, illiterate Nazi apologizer. You didn't care about those other things. And once again, that's the problem, right? Which is you just, throw out all this Nazi, and then we're going to have a problem. Okay, let's go to some of your questions here, because I know we've probably got some going on. Where is the chat? There we go. Okay. My buddy Safe. Okay. Yeah. So, by the way, Jethro, you got me in trouble. Okay. With Seyfedin. Long story short. I had an issue with Seyfedin. He was on a podcast talking about something I know a lot about, and he didn't know much about it. And so I called him a liar. And then Jethro, who loves him, said something about and then Seyfedin looked at this tweet that I had, looked at my podcast, and just went in my DMs and started shitting on me like crazy. So I'm like, come on my show and talk about it. And he's like, I wouldn't, you tension hogging whore, whatever. He was F-bombing this and that. So I'm like, fine, I'll review I'll look at your book. So I looked at the chapter, and then I'm like, oh my God, it's even worse than I thought. I don't think he was a liar. It was a really, really, really lazy writing. And I don't know if he did it. He sent me links to dispel it, something he talked about in the US, and he sent me links to a blog. This is legit. He sent me links to a blog post from Australia. Some lady that had a blog post as a defense to his book. And he's like, oh yeah, so I made mistakes, but they weren't material. And I'm like, they are anyway, we don't have to get into that. Like him or not, he was horrible, and I agree with him. I agree with him on the Israel-Palestine, Gaza-Palestine thing, and he was horrible in that debate. He was so bad in his debate with Walter Block. He was just rude, and Walter Block's a nice old guy, and I get it. That one maybe I understand a little more, but you didn't have to do that with Constantine. Okay. Art says, and I'm sorry, I don't know why these messages aren't showing up completely, but I appreciate you guys in here. When you talk about Germany or the lead up to the Civil War in America, you get a label. If you don't get the history correct, the label is likely to stick too. Now, let me just tell you this. I read this guy, his dad had done Shara. Michael Shara wrote a book about this. He was going to do a trilogy of the Civil War, and he wrote the first one, Killer Angels. It was about the Battle of Gettysburg, basically, okay? He dies And then someone's like, hey, tells his son, hey, you should finish this trilogy. And he's like, I'm not a writer. He was running a jewelry store. And they're like, well, I don't know. Someone should finish. So he decides to finish this. He does Of Gods and then he goes crazy. Of Gods and Generals, finishes the trilogy of the Civil War, does Spanish-American War, does the Revolutionary War, wrote one about World War I, which was fantastic. A lot of the stuff about the bomber pilots that you'd had there. There was a bunch of Americans that went over and fought in that war that, before we were even involved. And then World War II, so the Red Baron, that's like a legitimate thing. World War II, and he picks multiple people that are kind of like highlights, and he just follows them around, and then it skips around in the book. But one of them was the Desert Fox. I'm trying to remember, what's the guy's name? That's the only thing I know. Desert Fox, World War II. He's a German, Rommel, okay, out there in Africa. And I'm sorry, but he personalizes it, and a lot of especially Civil War as an example. You understand? You follow Jackson. I'm sorry. Is that a? What's the guy's name? I'm trying to remember all these people's names. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It humanizes. And a matter of fact, what I come around with the Civil War as an example. First of all, we talked about this yesterday. Civil War wasn't about slavery, but it turned into, now it's nice to pinpoint that that's the whole issue and cause of it. It was about Southern independence, and slavery became out of that. But what you end up getting here is some understanding that, one, the North was full of just incompetent generals over and over, different ones. The South had all the great minds, and they just didn't have the bodies. They didn't have the fighters, and they didn't have the manufacturing, which was a problem as well. Point is, it humanizes. These books have humanized, and so I take it, the standard view of the Civil War. I mean, I grew up in the Northwest. The North and South Yankee, Southerner thing just was never a problem, never something in my purview. And you just take the grant, Lincoln's great, blah blah blah. And then I'm reading these books, and I'm like, oh, it's interesting, right? And I started to have a different view of the South and the reasons for these things, and humanizing these. Stonewall Jackson, that's who it was. Who, by the way, is interesting. Stonewall Jackson, I don't think he owned slaves. And then even Robert E. Lee, he was freeing his slaves. I first got asked to be the general for the North, but he's like, I'm Virginian, you can't be doing these things. So yeah, you get labeled art. I get that. What else we got here? Has YouTube been showing more? Oh, we already said that. How can you be an objective Churchill historian and a #1 D writer at the same time? Yeah, he does do it pretty much. There's a difference between a drunk and a chronic drinker. You get a high tolerance, which doesn't make the alcohol all that effective anymore. You're not the classic drunk at that point. I don't know. Once again, this is where you want to push back. This is the place you want to push back. I would push back that he's a psychopath, except for I would just say, look, as we mentioned yesterday, writers and poets, they're fucking psychopaths. But I would say that perhaps he was. Although all politicians tend to be something. Once again, the media can hide things from everybody. FDR was in a fucking wheelchair for a long time. Damn it, Tyler, 3 days in a row. That's how I know the old lady is out of town. Yes, she is, J Fort. This is the best the British have. This is what Death says. No wonder why the UK is such a bad ship today. You know what, Death? You make a great. Let's put this up on screen here. You make a great point, which is later on in this interview, and it's been happening over and over. Tucker Carlson trashes the UK. He says, I love going there, but man, it is ugly. It's gross. It's a wasted place. And he blames everything on the World War II coming about from there. And perhaps that's the problem with the British. So they're taking it upon themselves and really pushing back. I mean, as an American, you guys trash, our way of life, our guns all the time. And I'm just like, whatever. You're Britain. I mean, once again, you want to say all these great things about Churchill, fine. But without the America, where are you? Okay. not in any way provoked. Ukraine much? Yes. There you go. That's exactly. Art says, you folks do realize we didn't exactly have precision guided bombs on either side, right? Yeah. Actually, that's a very good point. I don't know if you're still in here. I will take that as a great point, because we didn't have precision guided bombs. But we also didn't seem to have on either side. I mean, I would say this, Hiroshima as an example was not precision guided bomb either. I don't know that justifies what happened there. A lot of neocons like to do that. But you know, you make a great point, and that's all of this comes into it, right? Pretty sure everyone knew this, but okay. Later on in the war, like 3 months later, okay, maybe I'm just trying to catch up on it. Excusing hundreds of thousands of civilian deaths because the weapons weren't precise isn't the win you think it is. Okay, hey, be nice to Art. We're glad he's in here. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and we will be in your feed for a while. I do appreciate the back and forth. You got yourself in trouble. I tried to defend you to him. Yeah, safe doesn't safe. Let's go here, Jethro. Let's go here. Safe doesn't definitely doesn't do himself any favors with the rudeness, to be honest. Constantin actually conceded a lot of points in that debate, but Safe couldn't resist escalating to the antagonism. Yeah, actually, yeah. Robert E. Lee. Did I say Lee? Did I say Robert E. Lee? Yeah. What about him? I think he was a good general. He was a very good general. Just fought for the losing side. One thing I love about those books, I would encourage you guys to go. Jeff Shara is his name, Shaara, I believe, or Arra, something like that. Great books. They follow Chamberlain from Bowdoin College up in Massachusetts. He gets drafted or joins the military or whatever for the North. He's at Little Bull Run. He's in Gettysburg. And then he just, through the books, he's just part of this whole situation. So they keep following him along. Next thing you know, I believe that he took the surrender at the time from the South, Lee, at the end of the war. Pretty cool. I mean, this guy was just, it's fantastic stuff if you're interested in that kind of stuff. Okay, I think that's where we're ended. I'm not sure why all these people are so inclined to not do their research to make themselves look bad, because people just take sound bites. You get to say Nazi sympathizer. That's not at all what I've come to the conclusion that Daryl Cooper is. Maybe he's going to prove me wrong. I'm going to listen here in a second. When we're done, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to listen to this one. Let's see if I could show it here. Oops, not that one. That's definitely don't want to show. Hey. Why did that not go to the right page there? Anyway, I'm going to go watch this Scott Horton interview with Daryl Cooper, because I talk about the Holocaust, and maybe we'll do a third one as well. Lee High School here became Lee High School, legacy of educational excellence. Oh no, sorry to hear that, JC. Now everyone can Google that and find out exactly where you live. So there you go. All right, everybody, thank you for tuning in. When am I going to do a show tomorrow? The wife's still gone. If something comes up, we will do another show tomorrow. What's tomorrow? Monday? Yeah. We'll do another show about something that comes up. DM me, send me a message in my DMs if you want to know, if you have something you want to talk about at least. Other than that, we will see everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great Sunday. I hope your weekend was fantastic. Till next time. Bye.
Things are going to start happening to me now.
I think Tyler is amazing.
And I'm a fan of this show. I've watched several episodes.
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Tyler. You stink, Tyler.
Never promise crazy a baby.
Oh, I like that. That's a cool idea.
Are either of you homosexuals?
I go both ways. What do you think?
You mean like flaming or?
No, we're not homosexual, but we are willing to learn.
But I do wonder, for others, in other cases, whether libertarianism today is just an excuse for many on the right to act selfishly.
Look at me. And then some fat asses in Washington started having opinions. The Olympic Committee started having opinions. You bitch, I know you. You started writing your opinions.
And it just makes me wonder, you're dead, bitch. You know, why are you doing this to this poor guy?
I don't care. I'm a libertarian. What I'm getting is...
Did you vote for Joe Jorgensen or Trump?
Joe Jorgensen. That was the perfect answer. Thank you.